What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the podcast. It's just me and Adi chilling out once again. Last time you were here, you dropped like so much wisdom bombs and like interesting insights and all that kind of stuff. It was like you were the one who like coined the whole like the saga of Corridor as like a story that in and of itself is like a thing that drives the channel, which is really interesting because a lot of people brought that up afterwards.
Oh wow, no idea. It's just riffing, man. And I have nothing but love for you and your audience and everything you guys have pulled off. And I think I call you every once in a while, and I'm like, man, I wish I had a family, like a work family.
Yeah, man.
Look, I've got a great team around me. I love my squad.
Yeah,
you have an army, right? It's
Elite.
like I'm squad goals. You're like
Army
ready to
goals.
like fucking invade some.
Yeah, it's
Some
just
territory.
all special forces. Yeah, man. It's pretty crazy. Like the amount of like stuff happening at Corridor now compared to like Corridor from 3 years ago or 4 years ago. We have about 20 people in the office right now. It's like we had like 12 3 years ago.
Mhm.
It's nuts. Like just there's always things happening. And it's at the point now where like projects happen that I'm not like on top of.
For
So
sure.
like they just come out and it's like, wow, that's cool. That's what it must feel like to be somebody that watches the channel.
I mean, it makes sense. You hitched your wagon, so to speak, to the internet,
Yeah.
and as the internet continues to go from how it was perceived when we were growing up, like a kind of a geeky, nerdy thing for hackers, right? I mean,
Mhm.
to being what it is today, which is a like the most epic global distribution channel ever.
Yeah.
And, it's taken most of the, not most of, I shouldn't say most of it. It's continuously taking more and more ad dollars from linear media.
Yeah.
And that just the trickle down effect of that is going to
Yeah.
lead to Corridor digital abundance.
Yeah. I mean, it's happening little by little. Just, I mean, the fact that we've grown so much the past few years, which is weird. It's like everybody's like, oh yeah, the internet, YouTube. It's like, it's so cutting edge. And now it's like, it's so old news. It's like, why aren't you on TikTok now? But it's like Jake talks about how like fortunate we are to be in a world where distribution is free. It's
Yes.
like right now when everybody's like dealing with supply chains and like issues with China and like getting stuff across the ocean. It's like, it's effortless and easy for us to be like, here, everybody have our product and it costs us nothing to give it to you and you get it instantly. It's like, what a spot to be in. you
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
Yeah. It's, I just have kind of massive amounts of gratitude for this time we were born in, this
Yeah.
time that we exist in.
It's crazy.
I don't know.
People tuning into the podcast right now, perhaps they don't know who you are. They haven't seen the other podcasts we did together. Like,
Right.
could you introduce yourself to like the anonymous audience on the other side?
Yeah, I didn't know how to introduce myself for years because there've been like phases of my career and my life, and there's also like this huge disconnect between who I am as a human being and then like the content I make, right? And then people meet me and they're like, "You're nothing like how." Oh yeah, I'm playing a character, like I'm playing a character. But I would say there's a few phases of my career. I started off making or being part of the Hollywood ecosystem, right? So
Mhm.
that led to me being a part of the process, and that meant being one of the producers of several large theatrical release films.
Mhm.
I grew dissatisfied with that. And I was unable to kind of articulate why at the time, but I realized it was because I wanted to be working with intellectual property,
Mhm.
the characters I loved, and the games and cartoons that I loved growing up,
Mhm.
and I wanted to be an auteur. Again, I lacked the self-awareness to say this, so I was just kind of doing things, and that led to the next phase of my career where I just started running around wearing like Kiss makeup
Yeah.
and making fan films.
Which is a great phase of your career.
Great phase, right? It's just like dropping nukes and like, again, this is, I wouldn't say this is early YouTube, but this is YouTube like 2.0.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, the mainstream, the Hollywood apparatus that dictates what get back then, that what got made and what didn't get made. Like that, it hadn't really caught on to the whole YouTube thing.
Mm-hmm.
It was still niche, and so these fan films were getting a ton of attention.
Yeah.
Right, like just a ton of attention, which then eventually led to the spot I'm in now, where I'm creating shows for Netflix.
Yeah.
And I guess the bridge between those two things was a show that I didn't create, but was intimately involved in both the production, with the creative, and all of it. Was a show called Castlevania on Netflix. So that kind of ended up being this like bridge, which was great, because now, hindsight being an exact science, or really the only exact science, I can look back and go, oh, this makes sense. Like, I did some, I was a part of some bigger things that were very successful. I rebelled against everything and produced these, had crazy ideas, and then produced them into these renegade bootleg fan films. And I called it the Bootleg Universe. And then Castlevania kind of showed that, oh, this guy can also do the nerd thing and apply it to the system and have it still work. And then that kind of opened the floodgates. And
like what if he didn't bootleg it? It was just the thing.
Right. And the funniest thing was, so I was on production of season 1 of Castlevania. And I think it was after the sound mix of episode 4, because season 1 was like 4 episodes. So it was after the sound mix. A few of us went out for dinner to celebrate. There's like 4 of us. We went out to celebrate, like, and I was still in my like, no, fuck the system, fuck this, let's do. I was like still in that kind of vibration, and I really wanted to do a hard R Captain Planet. Where the Planeteers are labeled eco-terrorists, and Wheeler, who's the guy with the ring, the fire ring, is running around like burning people. It just, I had this whole pitch that I was super in love with, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna do this as a fan film. And then someone goes like, what if you just didn't do these as fan films, dude? Like, why don't you go like talk to the network, like, or talk to the conglomerate that owns it? Like, they will talk to you, like. And I realized, like, oh, that's a good point. Like, it just kind of like, I keep bumping this. I hadn't quite made that connection, weirdly enough, because I really enjoyed being playing the character of this rebel. I think this comes from just watching way too much wrestling. Like, I was like casting myself in this thing and not realizing, like, oh, I can just call the guy that develops shows or greenlights or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And get more content up and going, and like kind of turn this into an actual business versus like me running around just causing chaos because I enjoy causing chaos.
I feel like, there's also like being in your 20s. Like, I feel like there's like just a barrier of like, if you're in your 20s, you're not allowed to call a conglomerate and they won't talk to you. It's like the moment you're in your 30s, you can call them up and be like, hey, I have an idea. And they'll be like, okay, let's talk. It's like, it's weird. Like, I feel like you also just cross this line of starting to get a little bit older, a little bit wiser, and then like they accept you.
But I was doing that in my 20s.
Yeah. Yeah,
because all the producing, executive producing the big movies, that was happening in my 20s, right? So like, I had the access in my 20s.
Oh, and you're just like, whatever, I'm still gonna rebel it anyways.
Yeah,
was it because like, why were you doing it without actually reaching out to them because you didn't want someone else to like control what you could really do with it? You want like, because I feel like there's a sense of like, we all feel like we own these characters a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I own Luke Skywalker a little bit because I have like the Luke Skywalker that influenced my life. And if I wanted to make a story about Luke Skywalker, I don't want somebody else to tell me like, no, you can't do that. I want to be able to tell my story with the character. Like, was that a worry that you had? Like, that stopped you from?
For sure. It was that. It was also, there was like a defeatist mentality I had to kind of take on to manifest this rebellion.
Yeah.
Because I had to like method act in a way,
Mm-hmm.
in order to be like, fuck that, we're doing this. And like, and like I had people going along with me.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was like, there was like it's like I was sitting in this vibration of needing to rebel,
Mm-hmm.
even though I didn't necessarily need to rebel as much as I was rebelling.
Yeah.
Right. And at a certain point, it just became clear, like, oh, the next level of this is integrating with the system,
Mm-hmm.
using the whatever cachet you have and work with the system,
Yeah.
which I guess is the arc of kind of everyone who ultimately rebels.
Guys, today's episode is brought to you by Storyblocks, the one-stop shop for all of your stock asset needs for creators and businesses alike. Creators run into this problem often. You're working on a video and you need something, whether it's B-roll, audio, images, something to tie your video together. At Corridor Digital, we've scoured the internet for stock assets throughout all the years. And the one thing that we found that was consistent and better than all the rest was Storyblocks. Storyblocks offers high quality 4K B-roll, audio, images, assets like motion graphics and After Effects templates and more, all in one convenient location with a virtually unlimited library. That's right, they're constantly updating their library, and they have an unlimited all-access plan that allows you to download as much as you want from the site. It's all royalty-free. They know that making videos is hard enough, and they just want it to make it easy for you to get what you need so you can get the assets, put them in your video, and move on to the next part of the creative process. That's why we promote them so much here on the podcast and generally on Corridor Digital, because we use them all the time. And if you guys are interested in getting started for yourself, or if you're part of a team and you want to get their enterprise plan for the whole team, go to storyblocks.com/CorridorCast to get started, or just click the link in the description below. And once again, huge thanks to them for sponsoring. And now let's get back to the episode.
Right? You either right?
That's true.
Like Tony Hawk. Like now he's, you know what I mean? Like that dude was a rebel. Now he's like a business owner and like kind of runs a conglomerate.
Yeah.
Like every rock star.
Like every rock star.
Like
yeah.
every rock star. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, man.
They're out like picketing Napster. Like it's an arc, dude. It's a cliche. And I guess I'm on that trajectory of that cliche.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Aren't we all?
Yeah. And also, to be fair, there was another piece to this whole thing that was, I guess, interesting to observe. I work now a lot with like gaming IP,
Mm-hmm.
right? And game companies, so to speak, right?
Mhm.
So we're talking, it's public knowledge what some of it, some of it is not public knowledge. But you know, we're talking like Ubisoft with a lot of their titles, PUBG, like there's well, here's what I'm trying to say. Movie studios there's like a handful of conglomerates that ran Hollywood, right? We're
Mhm.
talking like 6 of them, like Disney, Universal, Sony, Fox,
Warner Brothers.
Warner Brothers, and then a couple mini majors and like Summit, Lionsgate. Obviously Fox and Disney have like, well, Disney acquired Fox, and there's a consolidation happening now, but the movie studios were really in the business of leveraging their own intellectual property to make new content, right?
Mhm.
So it ended up feeling like kind of a claustrophobic experience, because there's like, this is what we make, this is how we make it, and we're going to use this as a building block to make that.
So it's all very much like a product.
Very much a product, right? Because filmed entertainment, movies, TV, etc., are not like a core business vertical of most gaming companies.
Mhm.
There's a level of freedom that feels like the Wild Wild West.
Mhm.
And also game companies, and this is counterintuitive because you would think the movie companies, because they make so much content, they have these deep reservoirs of IP that they would take more risks with it because they have more of it, and gaming companies would be more like kind of closed off and close to the vest. I found the opposite to be true. Game companies tend to stretch more. There's more brand elasticity that they allow.
Interesting.
With their IP.
Do you think that's because the player is in control of the main character, so just naturally elasticity in how you approach the game?
No.
Also, let me just pull your mic to the side a little bit because it's right in front of your face.
Boom.
There we go.
Yeah. No, I don't think that's why. I think it has to do with how the movie industry evolved and how the gaming industry evolved.
Gotcha.
Right. So the movie industry, I'm going to use the word cartel to describe them. I don't mean it in like a facetious way, but they're effectively a handful of people built these studios. They vertically integrated the studios with the technology and the means of production and the like the sound stages and distribution, and then kind of work together in tandem to make sure that they maintain control. Right. So if it was like in the 1980s, if you went and made a movie independently, the only shot you had of people seeing it was getting a major studio to distribute it.
Yeah.
So they had all the leverage, right?
Yeah.
All the power, all the distribution. And even like just making that movie independently, like you needed their tools.
Right. You needed their camera and
You
their
needed
film
their shit.
and their like, yeah.
And if you didn't have it, it looked janky.
Yeah.
So because they had such a tight control over the apparatus, the whole thing, they are not incentivized to innovate. Right. So the innovation happens incrementally. This is why James Cameron's like a revered figure in film, because you like the innovation happens from like a handful of auteurs who force the innovation. Right. They get power and then they steamroll innovation and make it happen. Right. And then the cartel industry would then go and turn it into a gimmick and fucking erode it. That's just kind of how it worked.
And then Terminator 3 and Terminator Salvation and Terminator whatever. Yeah.
Gaming on the flip side, right, is an entire industry built off of the back of innovation.
Yeah.
Like if you're a game company and you have a hit game and then you don't innovate, that game company is fucked. It is just game over. Right? It's like, because gaming, you know, like tech gets a lot of credit for this, but I would argue that gaming has been innovating on a parallel path to tech, right? Like handheld devices like the Game Boy were like fucking,
yeah.
You know what I mean?
It was there before your iPhone was.
Right.
Yeah.
So, you know, Nintendo, like they took crazy fucking swings, like the Power Glove, the Virtual Boy. These are crazy fucking swings, dude. They're a tech company, right? Gaming companies are tech companies, whether they're doing hardware, whether they're doing software, or in the case of Nintendo, both. And they're IP companies.
Yeah.
Right. So they're forced to innovate, because if you don't innovate, you're fucked. And this is, again, it's innovate with the hardware, innovate with the software, innovate with gameplay mechanics. It's built off of the back of innovation.
Yeah. And you're literally getting a new system, a hardware system, like every 4 to 5 years. Like imagine if you did a movie, it's like, all right, now we're doing 36 millimeter. Now we're doing 40 millimeter film. Now we're doing 55 millimeter film. It's like that. If that was happening every 4 years in the movie industry since like 1930,
that affects the culture of the organization.
100%.
It just does. Right. So, movie people, the movie apparatus historically has been very risk averse. Because it's like, don't rock the boat. Don't piss anyone off. Don't get blackballed. Right? Tech is the opposite. Piss everyone off. Break some shit. Cause anarchy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Just get eyeballs on your system and, you know, start making a product. That's the tech industry.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny when you talk about like not rocking the boat too with like the entertainment industry. Like there's this element that like doesn't get talked about too much, which is like that question of like, will this work again? Like what makes people want to see your movie? And everybody feels like they have the answer, but deep down, no one has the answer. It's like sometimes that new thing just comes out and it's amazing. And sometimes that thing comes out that's great, but then no one sees it. And it's just like everybody's trying to figure out the imperfect science around like, okay, people love Batman. So if we put Batman in it and we keep it gritty, we should at least sell this many tickets based on past experience, but we're still just guessing, you know?
Yeah. And that's corporate America at play.
Yeah. Trying to quantize what makes entertainment valuable versus not valuable.
It's trying to sell a future that's uncertain with a degree of certainty, right?
Yeah.
You're trying to bake certainty into an uncertain future in order to affect a stock price. Right. But again, and I might get some flack for saying this, but like there are a few examples, like how much innovation actually happens in Madden. So you can find outliers in what I'm saying, but for the most part, if Call of Duty just straight up stops innovating, they become Medal of Honor tomorrow.
Right. Suck it, Medal of Honor fans.
Dude, I love Medal of Honor, man. Like I'm all about catching those grenades and throwing them back.
Yep.
Right. Innovated that mechanic. Like from recollection, like Medal of Honor was
I love that.
The innovator of that mechanic.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So I'm curious, like, you know, I'm very much on like this other side of the industry that's just battling its way out from like, you know, the digital age here, which is not at all associated with like these big studios. And, you know, everything, all the success we have just comes from like the direct relationship with the audience.
Yes.
So I really don't have much experience trying to make projects happen in quote unquote in the system, right? What is that? What is it like trying to get a project off the ground these days in the traditional media system? Like what does the process go like? What's step 1 through step?
There isn't
100.
one. That's the thing. Because it's completely unique. You know, I don't know how many projects I've been a part of at this point.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. So I don't want to just throw a number out. It doesn't matter. There's a lot. Every single time it came together differently.
Huh. So let's say right now you're like, all right, I want to make an action film about 2 guys that are great shots. One's a cop, one's a farmer.
Okay.
And
is it a movie or is it a series?
A movie.
Okay. Who's directing it?
This is what you have. This is your starting point. So now the next thing you have to figure out is like, who's your director, or like I'm just saying, like, so Adi Shankar is right here. He's like, all right, I'm deciding I'm going to make a movie. What's the next step?
Are you asking Adi Shankar right now, or is this just a novice filmmaker out there trying to get their movie made?
Adi Shankar right now. You right now. If you suddenly you walked out of this room with a passion in your heart, a burning passion to make a film, what would be your next steps? How would you try to get it off the ground?
I mean, I'd call a handful of buyers and just tell them, hey, this is what I'm looking to do next.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you say buyers, like, what do you mean by that? Like Netflix?
Netflix, HBO, that kind of thing.
And what makes them say yes?
Track record, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What if you didn't have a track record?
Yeah, that's the more interesting question, right? Because I don't think like I'm like particularly helpful to anybody, right? Because then it's just like, oh yes, well, you know, you just pick up the phone and you get in. It's not literally not helpful. Like it just. Look, I remember being on the other side of this, moving out to LA, not knowing anybody, trying to figure out how the fuck this industry worked, and listening to interviews from douchebag filmmakers such as myself right now. And they would say things like, yes, making a movie is like creme brulee. You need to, and you're like, what the fuck are you talking about, bro? Like, give me practical fucking steps, right? So your question is, if you're a young filmmaker today.
Sure. Yeah. Young filmmaker.
How do you get your foot in the door?
Yeah. How do you try to make a movie with one of these systems, with one of these studios?
The best way to do it is not try to make your movie.
So you got to really like try to focus on what they're trying to deliver as a product.
Yes. And work with that. Right. There's open writing assignments all the time. There's open directing assignments all the time. Right? Get in the room, get in contention for one of those.
Makes sense.
Because this passion project, 2 guys in the farmer movie, like they might already have something like that. You know what I mean? How do you know that this is like, you just don't know. Figure out what your superpower is, because everyone has one,
Mhm.
right? And it's really figuring out like what that superpower is and what your superpowers are not.
Mhm.
You know, like I meet a lot of young filmmakers who are like have like the dopest visuals, and they have no sense of story.
Mhm.
And if you go in knowing that, that's great. You can work around that, right?
Yeah.
You can work around that weakness. If you lack the self-awareness and think you're like this master storyteller,
Yeah.
you're gonna strike out.
Then you end up wondering why you're getting so many notes, and it gets all frustrated.
Yeah, you get frustrated and you're like, oh, they're not understanding my vid. It's like it's a whole thing. So the best way to get in is work through a system. I'll give you another example of this, right? If you want to break into YouTube today,
Mhm.
doing what you do,
Mhm.
right? Which is like VFX, stunts, action shorts, and tutorials. That's what Corridor is,
More or less,
arguably,
yeah.
and a podcast. So it's that, right? It's
Mhm.
like basically like a film school without the like the weird know-it-all professors, right?
Yes. Well, there's at least one weird know-it-all professor.
Right. Uh, how do you break into that? Well, the best way to do that is to get your attention or the attention of someone at Corridor and find a role within Corridor,
Mhm. Yeah.
not to go try to build your own Corridor.
Yeah. Yeah, because then it's a huge uphill battle
It's a
versus
huge
kinda
uphill
like
battle, and there are there's like a well of mistakes that you've made,
Mhm.
that you're aware that you made, that you won't make again, that you can save someone the legwork, you know?
Yeah. It's funny to like looking at Corridor, like there have been people that come into the company and then move on from the company. Like Clint did that.
Clint,
Yeah.
great example.
Great example.
He grew immensely as just a human being
Mhm.
while here, right? I saw this dude who was kind of like, seemed a little stressed out. And he works with you, and then boom, stress is gone. He's just creating.
Mhm. Yeah.
And then also, like, I think community is huge with any creative endeavor, like authentic community, not the, hey, we're gonna meet up and complain about shit and be negative and think that we know better and the Batman movie should have been made like this and instead they all suck. Like not that community.
Mhm.
That's just toxicity.
Mhm.
But I mean actual like we're gonna get together and build that like that tribe.
Mhm.
I think
Yeah.
I personally underestimated how important that was in my own journey.
That was the thing that people always talked about with college. It's like, you go to school for film, you're probably not going to really learn how to make a good movie.
Right.
They're going to teach you how to be a good crew member for
Yeah.
equipment that's out of date as of 15 years ago.
Yeah.
But what you will meet is 10, 5, 20, a chunk of people that are just as passionate about doing what you're doing.
Sure.
And then together you guys can team up and start making some cool
For
stuff.
sure. So if you're trying to break into the industry, get staffed on something, even if it's like a super low level spot on that thing, because
Mhm.
then you can like move up the ecosystem. You can move up the ladder. You can get more experience. And more importantly, you can learn from people who are doing it at a high level, right?
Mhm.
Or a higher level. And one day, hopefully, you may have the leverage. You may accrue and amass the leverage to be able to get your own project through the system, right?
Mhm.
But at that point, you will have so much like knowledge and wherewithal that it will be a different project than the one you'd pitch as a
Yeah,
novice.
that's very true. We tried to get we had this series idea called Tether,
Yes.
or movie idea, and then it became The Beast. And then we wrote a script for The Beast and we started shopping it around. And the most serious, I guess, opportunity we had, the guy approached us like, "Hey, this is cool. I like the idea. I like the setting. Here's a structure for how we do our horror films.
Mhm.
If you guys can rewrite it to match the structure, then we can fund you." And I think it's a perfect example. Where it's like it's not your passion project. You need to go in and fit somebody else's product that they're trying
Yes.
to deliver and help them deliver what they want to
Yes.
deliver. And then from there, you meet people, you talk to people, and you can refine it from there. But that's very much a realization of like, well, we don't want to make a generic horror movie that hits these beats and we just reskin it to like look like our thing. Like we want to make this. And that's kind of a realization that like the only way we will get to make this is when we have enough audience support and resources to just make it.
For sure.
You know, you won't
For
be able
sure.
to talk to anybody else and get their permission to do it or anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And look, if you want to do the auteur thing, then they got to kind of follow your path.
Mhm.
Build the audience organically, right?
Yeah.
Be able to demonstrate that you have an audience waiting for your crazy idea or not so crazy idea, just for your unconventional concept, right? And then it just becomes like an economics question. Like,
Yeah.
can we, like, how much can we make it for where we retain the vision and don't have to start opening it up to get a bigger audience?
Yeah.
That's that.
Finding that balance. And that's a really hard question I think a lot of people have to like ask themselves, which is like, if you don't have an audience
Right.
now,
Yeah.
why would you have an audience just because your thing gets funded? You know, if
Sure.
what you're making now isn't speaking to people or isn't finding a voice or finding people that are passionate about it, more money isn't going to suddenly
Yeah.
change that.
There's also this other kind of disarming reality of, I don't want to say the movie business, the content business.
Mhm.
There's a lot of shit that gets paid for, made, completed, and never fucking released.
Yeah.
Because the hardest part of the equation is getting distribution
Still.
Because look, if you make a movie for $2 million, yeah, you can dump it on YouTube. But like, you're going to have a bunch of pissed off investors, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Because you're not making any of your money back.
Right.
So where could you go with a movie for $2 million?
Well, it's all that, you've got like,
Like if Netflix is like, no, we're good.
there's international. So there's a few markets that you go to, like Cannes has one,
Mhm.
AFM, the American Film Market, that's around like October, November in Santa Monica. And there are these film markets that you can go to, and you show up there with your film, and then you sell it individually to international distributors, right? And you do that with the help of a sales agent
Mhm.
who goes there with you and tries to get you, okay, we're going to sell France. And, oh, we sold France for $50,000. Cool, right? And you piecemeal distribution contracts that way.
Hmm.
And that works for small movies and huge movies because there's a need for product. But again, it's the example you gave about the horror film. They're not looking for you to like get your vision out there. They need a specific thing for their audience,
Right.
right? They know that, hey, we have a slot for a horror movie.
Yeah. It's got to be a horror movie.
It's got to be a horror movie. And do you have a horror movie? Cool, we can talk, right?
Mhm.
And then you find out like, oh, it's a ghost movie. No, what we found is ghost movies don't work well in our territory. Home invasion horror movies work well. So we're looking for a home invasion horror movie. And it gets like really specific because again, this industry is old,
Mhm.
right? So as much as it seems kind of like random and some of the things, the outliers, the hits are, they're just random and they just kind of blow up. But most of the movie business is a margin business.
Mhm.
And it's like you can't take risks in a margin business because hey, it's gonna fucking bomb, right? like
Yeah.
like we have a slot to release an action thriller. If we don't release that action thriller, and instead we release this dramedy about your life as a screenwriter, our company goes under, right?
Yeah.
Or if we release this action thriller that we know, hey, if we have Dolph Lundgren in it or Mickey Rourke in it, and ideally both of them in it, and another MMA fighter, we know it'll sell X number of units. But instead we don't cast them and we cast like you and your boy, right? Then like,
yeah.
then it's like goes away. And then you realize like, oh, fuck. This is an old business. So it's all been kind of crystallized into these like models.
And do you think there's truth to things like that? Or is it superstition when somebody says like, oh, if you have Dolph Lundgren in it, it'll sell this many tickets?
There's absolutely truth to this. So if you go to like, what's the, not Box Office Mojo, I think that's like a website, right?
Mhm.
And you Google like Jason Statham, or not Google, you write his name, write Jason Statham. Look through all the Jason Statham action movies and you'll
Mhm.
see like, oh shit, there's actually like a trajectory to these things. Holy shit. Like they make around the same amount of money. And then all of a sudden theatrically. And then that number like kind of starts going down and down and down. And and then he's in the Fast and Furious. And now that number starts going up and up and up and up. It's not an exact science, but it's not superstition either.
Yeah.
And look, this is a sector of the business, but this is most of the business.
Yeah.
Most of it operates by that, right? So like, I was like kind of laughing, like not in a haha mean way. Like I was watching an old podcast because I again love you guys and I love Clint. I think you had Freddie Wong on there, and he was like talking about how like, oh man, my life would be so different if I just focused on making low budget horror movies, and then I'd be like a working filmmaker today, like making content like pretty regularly, and I'd have worked up my way up the ladder. But instead, I'm like this YouTube guy without a YouTube channel. I'm like, I fucking told you guys that like, like 10 years ago. That's exactly the advice I gave you guys. I said, okay, look, focus on low budget horror movies and then start adding more action into them and then pivot into like low budget action thrillers.
Yeah. And go from there.
And
you know, it's funny, like that doorway opened like multiple times.
Yes.
And we'd put like a foot on the path and be like, oh, and we'd like take our foot back.
I think well, it's not the path for you.
Right. I mean, what we're doing now is
it's not the path for you because, and I can get into why, but I don't, again, I feel like a douchebag. I'm just kind of like telling it like it is.
I like having you break down like what's going on.
Here's why it's not the path.
This is a podcast just for me now.
All right. Here's why was not the path for you.
Okay.
You're like a tribe leader. Right? Your path, I always felt, was to build and grow an ecosystem and grow a collective, right? Like the thing every time we would meet, you'd say, yes, you know, we don't spend more than we make.
I like to give you a really refined accent.
Yeah. Well, you were fucking refined. In my mind, you were, look at your hair, bro. Like you look like a character out of Castlevania. You look like a Belmont.
Hell yeah.
You know what I mean? I could totally see you being a Belmont. And Belmonts are aristocrats. Yeah. So that was like, that never necessarily needed to be your path. And the thing is, if you're going and making a low budget film for a distributor, like you kind of have to be exclusive and you kind of have to exclusively do that and then hand it over and then you're done. Right. So the whole corridor thing kind of starts fizzling.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
Man, interesting stuff. I'm glad that we ended up where we did and that we made the decisions we did along the way. Like being able to put my foot into those worlds a little bit, it was like super enlightening and like taught me a bunch. And I would never like give up those experiences, but it's also just helped reinforce that like we're on the right path right now.
Oh, for sure.
At least for myself, you know.
For sure. Dude, you're crushing it.
Thanks, man.
You're crushing it.
Everybody here's crushing it. You're crushing it too.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, you are. You're doing a lot of the things that I'm like I kind of wish I was doing that too. You know, like you're getting to play with the IPs in a way that I've always kind of wanted to play with them as well. Which actually, okay, what's your favorite / what's the best video game movie that's been made or a TV show in your opinion? And what do you think is the like untapped game currently that would make for a really good TV series or movie?
So I'm going to be like that annoying guest and say that like, I don't have opinions about content. Like I don't believe that anything's like the best or the worst or I just like, I don't have opinions. And I've trained my mind to not have opinions because I've realized like that some of that's ego. Cause then it's like my perspective based on the kaleidoscope of sounds and images that make my life. And then I'm judging this piece of art and be like, well, you know, what they could have really improved is in the third act. Like, right? So you kind of have to just cut the cord with that because I don't control it. So now if I'm not involved in the production of it, I just try to look at it as like moment to moment, like how is this making me feel? And if it's not making me feel good, then fine, I'll turn it off because I didn't make me feel good.
Yeah.
And that's it. The moment I start getting into like the ranking of it all, it's not like full negativity, but it feels like a branch off of the tree of negativity
Interesting.
where you're like judging things based off of an arbitrary set of things that actually don't exist, you know?
Yeah. It's like, I guess why go through life having to make things good and bad for yourself? It's just like, you know, you like it, do more of it and leave it
Yeah.
at that.
Yeah. Like I had an amazing time watching this movie called Night at the Roxbury.
Yeah, the one with was it not Chris
Will
Purnell, but,
Ferrell and
Will Ferrell
Chris
and
Kattan.
Chris Kattan, yeah.
Love that movie. Right? But I'm just like enjoying the process of watching this. I'm not trying to analyze like the shots and the deconstruction and then, you know. So yeah. And it's been
Okay, let me
so I focus on what I can control. Does that make sense?
yeah.
Like, and I just focus on what I can control. If I can't control it, then I don't, because I look at it as like every word, every thought is just my life force.
Mhm.
And if I'm dumping life force into something that I do not control and trying to control it with a narrative, I'm wasting my energy.
Man, where's the wisdom right there?
Yeah?
Yeah.
Cool.
That's a good thing to think about. Seriously. Man. Well, all right, I'm gonna hit you with this next question anyways. If you had to make a Metal Gear Solid movie,
Yeah.
how would you approach it? Have you thought about it at all?
Oh, yeah.
Are you a Metal Gear Solid fan?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. What would your Metal Gear Solid movie look like?
Should we actually get it? Like how deep do you want to get into this?
Hit me.
You know, like I guess the broad strokes of it. And this is just the broad strokes. And if you'd like to dissect deeper, I'm down. If you want to switch to the next question, I'm down also. I wouldn't make it gritty. Right?
Mhm.
Metal Gear Solid is not the Dark Knight.
Yeah, definitely.
And the more you try to make it the Dark Knight, the more it like loses what's special about it, right?
Mhm.
This is a dude who fucking carries around a cardboard box to hide in. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah.
There's a I don't want to say wackiness, because again, wackiness, it sounds like judgment, but
But there's a wackiness.
there's a wackiness.
Yeah. It's not like a negative wackiness.
It's not a negative wackiness.
Yeah.
But there's a wackiness and a self-awareness that it has. Not Deadpool self-awareness, right? He's not, but like, you know, like when I look back at the first Metal Gear, or not, that's not the first Metal Gear, sorry, Metal Gear Solid.
Right.
So the first PlayStation 1 Metal Gear. Like, what were some of the most memorable moments, right? And it's like, oh shit, the Psycho Mantis moment.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So
It's super wacky.
It's super wacky,
like
but
it's super intense and cool, but it's also
cool.
really fun.
It's cool, right? So it's really just kind of not making it overly gritty, not making it overtly like the Dark Knight.
Interesting.
But look, again, I don't think there's a right way or a wrong way to do it. I think that's just how I would approach it. That's how I see that's how I see it. Throw this to like 50 different people and you'll get 50 different responses. I don't think one's the right way, one's the wrong way. I don't think there's a right way or wrong way to do anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's say you're making the movie your way.
Mhm.
You kind of described the tone here. What story would you pick? Or combination thereof, or sliver thereof?
But I feel like, you know, this is where and this is unique to me because I'm also a writer, right? I'm
Mhm.
like someone who can direct and write, because these are now like skills I've acquired through the 14 years I've been doing this. I would just write an original story,
Completely.
a completely original story.
Why would you do that way? Just so you can like, is that where your inspiration comes from? When like you can just delve into like something with no predetermined like construct and you just go for it?
I don't know. Just for Metal Gear, that's just how I would that's what I would want to do. And like then I would kind of ask the question like, okay, is this appropriate for the fan base? Am I delivering? Because also when you're like working with big brands like that, and you're working with that would be like a big budget film, because there isn't really a low budget version of
Right.
Metal Gear. Then I would ask the hard questions of myself, like, okay, is this approach delivering the experience for the pre-existing fan base,
Mhm.
and is it opening the door to converting people who are potential fans into fans, right? And
Mhm.
and if the answer is no, then I'm just not the right guy to do that,
Yeah.
right? And I think like again, Metal Gear is such a specific one. Um, yeah, Metal Gear is just such a specific one. And to be fair, I don't look at myself as the right person to do that, or the right person to do anything, right? I just kind of, things come to me, um, and I'm just grateful that opportunities come to me,
Yeah.
and only want to proceed if they're in 100% alignment with the people involved and the audience.
That's probably a really good way to make sure that you don't end up doing something that later on just crumbles and turns into a big stress ball. Making sure that everything's
Yes,
set correctly from
for
the
sure.
get-go.
And not make a decision out of ego,
Mhm.
right? Because if you're working with a beloved property like Metal Gear, and I think Metal Gear is also a interesting one, because then there's also the Kojima element, right? It's not
Yeah, I
it,
mean,
it's not it's
this is a
not
very hypothetical argument because
right.
Kojima would obviously, like, be like, "This is like, I'm gonna make Metal Gear, the movie," you know?
Sure, but the other way of just I guess just removing it from the Metal Gear of it all, right?
Mhm.
In that specific instance, it's like working with an author
Mm,
on a book, right? It's like adapting Harry Potter.
yeah,
There's an auteur who had a vision there, right?
yeah.
So you've kind of got two paths here. You can either uh, be their executor, right?
Mhm.
Like go to J.K. Rowling and say, okay, we're gonna translate the Sorcerer's Stone into a movie,
Mhm.
or go in and just like literally do your own. Frank Miller Dark Knight Returns it,
Right.
and do your own, your own thing, right? Paint your own, graffiti it, or stamp, put your own stamp on it, right? Now, if the situation doesn't call for that, and you try to push it that way, that's just ego,
Mhm.
right? But there are a lot of situations that do actively call for that,
Mhm.
right? Where like they're like, look, we need your take on, I don't fucking know, G.I. Joe, right? Because we did like all these things and they didn't quite land the way we wanted them to land. So we need like a fresh take,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, I feel like the challenge with all that stuff, especially, like, when working with an IP that's especially when working with, like, a game IP, like, if you wanted to translate Metal Gear Solid or really any, like, Halo or any, like, crazy beloved video game thing to the screen, is, like, the ideal world is where you capture what made it good so that everybody, or you capture what made it, I guess, inspiring, so that everybody that, like, got into that IP can enjoy what you make, but then ideally you also capture whatever it was in there that made you love it in the first place, so that people who are seeing it for the first time feel that same spark. Like, if you can capture the thing that, like, made you go like, "Dang, Metal Gear Solid is a great game." If you can capture that and bring that into your movie or your TV show for people who haven't played Metal Gear Solid and be like, "Wow, this is really cool. Metal Gear Solid is a really cool world," or Snake is a really cool character. Like, that's where, like, things really succeed. But it's hard to really do that, to be able to, like, double capture the genius that worked once, then, like, bring it to life again.
Sure. And it's also tricky. It adds an additional layer of trickiness when that game uses so much of the language of cinema
Yeah.
to achieve that effect, right?
Yeah.
It's like making a Grand Theft Auto movie.
Yeah, it's like there's already a huge movie in Grand Theft Auto
Right.
already. Yeah.
Because I would argue in a lot of ways, Grand Theft Auto is like an engine. There actually is a Grand Theft Auto movie. Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So this is a crazy story. So I believe in the 70s, Ron Howard wrote, directed, and starred in a Grand Theft Auto movie produced by Roger Corman. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So Roger Corman, who's he was like a legendary B-C movie financier, producer. He had like a his own studio where he would just churn out these like genre movies back in the day. And a lot of household name filmmakers, like again, Ron Howard, James Cameron, like a lot of these guys got their start working for Roger Corman. So he's like a, revered figure of sorts in the business, kind of obviously much older. But yeah, he made this movie called Grand Theft Auto, starring, written, directed by Ron Howard. And it feels very much like Grand Theft Auto. So Roger Corman ran around selling the rights to Grand Theft Auto, and Fox optioned it like in the 2000s and started developing Grand Theft Auto for Eminem. I can't remember who wrote the script. This is just blanking on me, but this was like a script that people liked. Wow. And anyways, the rights lapsed. Fox just didn't get involved. And then I found out about this. So I tried to get the rights from Roger Corman, right? And then, so this is like 2008, 2009. I'd literally been in LA for months and I heard about this. I'm like, you know how I work, right? I'm just kind of like, I become like a target. I'm like, wait, what? Grand Theft Auto's available? Where? How? Who do I have to call? Who would I have to call? So I get a meeting with Roger Corman. I'm trying to like figure this out. And I have no idea what the fuck I'm doing, right? So I'm winging it. But when you're winging it, you have more bravado than when you know.
Oh, 100%.
Right?
Yeah. Because you don't want them to know that you're winging it.
And you don't know that you're winging it. You know what I mean? Like you're like behaving like a character from a fucking movie. Which is like what I did from most of my 20s. I was just behaving like a character. I was like, oh, Fast and Furious, okay, I'm gonna behave like that guy. It's all about family. Yeah, and then, so yeah, like and then I like through 4 degrees of separation, there are these two brothers, I believe, my memory serves me well, who like kind of created Grand Theft Auto.
Like in the game?
The game.
Yeah. I don't know if they're brothers, but yeah, there's basically guys. 2 dudes, like Sam something and like Dan something.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I knew through, again, 4 degrees of separation, I get in touch with one of the dude's neighbors.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Again, I'm like 23. I'm like complete delusion here, right? So I tell this guy, hey, can you just stop this guy and like hand him a note? I'll like email you a note, you put on their hand in the note, right? And I knew that like I couldn't be like, hi, sir, I would like really like to make a Grand Theft Auto movie. Please, please, please. It was kind of aggressive. It was like, yo, dog, I'm making a Grand Theft Auto movie and I'm getting the rights. You know what I mean? Like that whole thing. And yeah, then I heard back from like Rockstar Legal and we like went back and forth for a while and they were like, hi, you're a friend of the court. Do not go down this road. Our Grand Theft Auto game rights have eclipsed any movie rights. So like literally if you're going to make a Grand Theft Auto movie, it has to be like a strict remake of that movie that Ron Howard directed and started.
Wow.
And I'm like, kind of weighing my options. I'm like, well, why don't we just work together and I'll make the Grand Theft Auto movie for you, for Rockstar. You know what I mean? I'm trying that. Also, the week I moved to LA, I just got in touch with Nintendo, like Nintendo America. And I just was like, oh my God, I was fucking insane, dude. I get in touch with them and I write this whole thing. And who was I talking to? Again, this was a while ago, but I basically started talking to like high up executives in Nintendo. And I was like, look, I will make, it has to be a 2-picture deal. I can't just commit, to one movie with you guys. It has to be 2.
Just that's right out of the gate with Nintendo.
Yeah. It was like, yeah.
How do you even get in touch with Nintendo as a 23-year-old?
You just find their number and you call them and you leave a message.
That's it?
Yeah. People will call you back, dude. This is like, look, like getting in touch with Steven Spielberg, that's fucking hard, right? Dude has gatekeepers and this, and there's like people trying to get in touch with them. Most corporate entities, like there are people there to answer the phones. They'll call you back. They'll fucking call you back. Someone will have a conversation with you somewhere. Yeah. And I just realized like, oh, you can just call people up and their information is somewhere on the internet, right? And I figured out how to get their information. And then I would just call them up and start having conversations.
Huh.
Like I flew to Atlanta on a red eye and went like deep into the fucking like kind of like the farm area to meet with the what's his name? Xavier something. He like created the Cabbage Patch Kids. Wanted to make a hard Cabbage Patch Kids.
That would be sweet.
Yeah, and like, you know,
so the Rockstar thing, Grand Theft Auto never happened, huh?
No, of course not.
I mean, I know the answer.
We would all know about this if it had happened. But I guess I don't know why we got into that, but or how we landed on this story. But the point is, I realized when I first moved out here that people were like a degree of separation, and also video games weren't looked at as this like AAA premium IP, right? They were like giving the shit to UA Bowl.
Yeah, I remember
right?
that.
Some of the biggest games ever have adaptations by UA Bowl.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so, like...
was there like some sort of like tax thing going on with him? Like, how did he continue to make all these games or videos that are just not videos, movies that are like...
that is what it is, right? Like, you know, direct-to-video, low-budget films get made all the time. That, again, they're
they just got the rights and made them.
It's what we're talking about the distribution slots.
Yeah.
Right? What to me was shocking was that the game companies were allowing this to happen with their intellectual property.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, just over and over.
I mean, what did he do? He did obviously Far Cry.
House of the Dead.
Blood Rain.
Alone in the Dark, Afraid of the Dark, something like that.
Yeah.
Postal. There's a fantasy one that has Jason Statham in it. I can't remember.
Yeah, it's like Under Siege or Dragon Siege. Or,
yeah. And probably like one or two more that I can't remember. That's crazy.
So yeah, like, you know, it was like getting in touch with rights holders. I mean, the week I moved, before I even moved to LA, my strategy was I made an Excel spreadsheet. And I had every single piece of intellectual property that I loved growing up on it. And then I tried to figure out who owned it. And I just called them. I was like, hey, is this available?
Huh.
And someone would fucking hit you back and be like, no, fuck you. Or yes, let's talk, you know?
Yeah. And
then they would talk a little bit and we're like, you're a child. Call me in 20 years. You know? But yeah, no, I like, it was a huge education experience. And I also like would get like hyper close, you know, like, to things like, and by the way, I wasn't focused on the kind of content that I do now, which is my passion. Like I'm passionate about the stuff I do now. I was looking at everything. Like I was like, why is there no hard R Captain Crunch movie? Right? Like where's like the horror movie with Tony the Tiger? Like, you know?
Yeah.
You know, I looked at like Voltron. I had a conversation about Paddington Bear, like, because I grew up in Hong Kong, which was a British colony, so I was very familiar with like the British IP, the British IP, right?
Yeah.
The one that I was like, the one I got like closest on, and I don't remember fully why this didn't materialize, but it was something to do with me. And again, this is early in my career, right? Like later on, I got access to different stuff and whatnot, but I loved Indian in the Cupboard. I wanted to like do Indian in the Cupboard, so I like got in touch with the author and went down the road on that.
They did end up making a movie for that too.
They did, yeah. They made one movie, but there were like 5 books.
Right. Yeah, it's a good movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, Darth Vader's in it.
Yes.
Yeah. You want to talk about Guardians of Justice at all?
Sure.
So I'll intro it, even though you're going to probably do a much better job introing it. But you've been working on this project for years and years and years. And it's funny because like we shot a scene for you way back in the day.
Yeah.
And it's funny, like so much time elapsed that when it came out, people were like, "Did you know this movie is using some of your stuff?" It's like, "Yeah, we know." It's like so many people reached out to us, like thinking that you guys had just ripped us off.
I
Like,
mean,
put
I
our stuff in
did
there.
rip you off, but in a consensual way.
In a consensual way. It was exciting.
No, I remember being like, "Hey, Niko, I want you to do this thing, and only you can do it. So
Yep.
can you please do it?" And you're like, "Yeah, sure." And I'm like, "Oh, thank you. Love you, man."
No, it was
And then
great.
7 years later,
And 7 years later, it came out.
or actually, it was probably like 5.5 years after you shot the thing, maybe.
Yeah, and now I have a little
5
Netflix
years.
credit or IMDb credit.
Yeah. Dude,
Which is
you're
great.
a Netflix filmmaker, man.
Hell yeah.
Boom.
Boom.
I always make do. I always make good on my promises. That's what I said. I said,
Yep.
yeah.
So when you first started that project and like along the way, you know, a lot of what were talking about, I was like, it was an extension of your bootleg universe, but also a way for you to take a lot of these ideas and characters, you know, that were close to you and like ways you wanted to twist them a little bit. And you're just like, well, let's just not call him Superman. Let's just not call him Batman. But we
Yeah.
get it. It's basically that archetype.
Mhm.
And so you got to finally kind of jump into these characters and make your own story and your own world around this. But you know, it obviously took 5 or 6 years to do.
Yes.
So I'm a little bit curious, like, what was the journey like? Why did it take so long? And like, what did you learn about that process and kind of your love for the characters in that medium along the way?
So there's also, so Guardians of Justice opens with a suicide,
Mhm.
right?
Which is a great story opening, in my opinion.
Yeah. It's like basically Superman is depressed. You know, he talks about how he's got super hearing, so he hears the whole world screaming for help all the time.
Yeah.
If he goes to sleep and he wakes up, someone's died, and he feels guilt because he could have done something about it, right? And then he loads a kryptonite bullet into a gun and he shoots himself in the head on live TV.
hmm
That's how it opens.
Such a good opening.
Appreciate it. Without getting into the, we can get into it if you'd like, but like there's a huge personal element to the story
Mhm.
in and of itself, right? So that in and of itself, when you make something that's personal, yeah, there's, Superman and Batman and the Flash and Wonder Woman and all that. There's that, but also ultimately the story was personal. When you make something that personal, it takes an emotional toll on you that is hard to explain, you know?
Mhm.
It's just hard to explain. Yeah, it feels almost like giving birth. I've never given birth, so I shouldn't fucking say that. Or like father, like fatherhood or something
Mhm.
like that. Like I don't have any children, but like,
Yeah, you're pouring yourself into it, and of course, the vessel that you're pouring yourself into does not always reflect what you're pouring into it necessarily.
and then like you got to fight certain impulses that you don't, that you're not aware that you have to fight, like perfectionism,
Mhm.
being a control freak. On a parallel path, right? The way the story's told through 16 different mediums,
Mhm.
live action, 2D animation, 3D animation, stop motion, claymation, like fucking just like South Park paper animation, first person POV, you know what I mean? Like just, it's hard to explain the show unless you watch it, right? Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Imagine trying to explain the show when the show doesn't exist.
Right. And you kind of learned the show along the way too.
I realized how bad of a communicator I used to be. I didn't know.
Mhm.
Because I just thought like I was this amazing communicator, right? Then you get into it and you're like, oh my God, I'm just like not fucking specific at all in how I speak. Like my words are like kind of like I'm like kind of like a brat in the way I use my words. Get fucking specific, man. When you
Mhm.
say hair, what do you mean? How short? And it forced me to become someone who could finish the show. Does that make sense? Like I
Mhm.
didn't start that project. Take the vision aside, take the personal aspect aside, take Superman and Batman, take all that aside. I did not start that project as the person that could finish that project. I had
Right.
to become the person who could amass the tools and the emotional maturity to finish that project.
Yeah. So looking at it now, how do you feel about it? Like, do you feel like it's this? Do you feel like it was this thing that represents kind of your growth and step into like the new era of who you are now?
I don't really think about it.
Yeah.
I don't really think about it. You know, because ultimately, um, I realized that there's a version of life where you're kind of having these expectations, and they may come in the forms of hopes and dreams. They may feel positive,
Hmm.
but the universe is going to deliver something for you in an unexpected way. And it's about being prepared for the unexpected. It's about stepping into the unknown without fear.
Hmm.
And I let go of any sense of like attachment, ownership, uh, expectation. And that process somehow emotionally cut the cord of like feeling anything. It's more of an experience.
Hmm.
It's like I experienced this thing that is out in the ether that some people respond to very passionately because they fucking love it, right? They're like, nothing like this exists. I fucking love it.
When making something like that, don't you still have to kind of judge if it's working or not, if it's good or bad, so you can like get it to the point where it's working?
Yes.
So how do you do that while also still kind of cutting that cord?
Um, it's a great question. You know, I've learned this from producing
Hmm.
and working with very hyper talented individuals that should be fucking James Cameron household names who just sabotage, right? And um and just kind of observing what is the unifying thing that leads to that kind of self-sabotage, and it's 100% of the time it's ego.
Hmm.
And it's ego so deep that there's a lack of awareness that it's even ego.
How
They
do you
think
how do
that
you
they
define ego? Just so we're on the same starting
I
point.
don't know. I don't know how to define ego. I mean, I can observe it, right? Because
Mhm.
there's like the soul. There's like the soul. There's the alien piloting the exoskeleton,
Yeah.
right?
Uh-huh.
And then there's this being that thinks that it is the kaleidoscope of sounds and images and is building stories around everything.
Mhm.
That's the ego,
Okay.
right? Look,
Yeah.
storytelling's great, but where are we right now? America? Bullshit. America doesn't exist. These are constructs, right? And they're
Right.
constructs that are made up and like passed down, right? This is microphone's a made up word, right?
Yeah.
And like it's like if you get too attached to the story, you get too attached to the construct, then you're in the ego.
Mhm.
How I see it, and you're in the ego,
And
and then
that's where
you're
the
driven by the
self-sabotage
ego. Pardon?
and that's where the self-sabotage
Yeah,
starts?
because the ego wants to preserve itself, preserve its identity. So then you're out being like, you know, and then you lose, and here's where it fucks you. You lose sight that you are the architect of your reality. You are the architect of your life.
Mhm.
Everything that you has been constructed around you are a series of decisions that you're making that's manifesting them.
Mhm.
These things, right?
Yeah.
And there's a version where life is happening for you. And then there's a version where life is happening against you,
Mhm.
right? So these are like different realities you can step into. And when I meet people and this has nothing to do with talent, dude. It has nothing to do with talent. When people like identify too much with their avatar, and they're like, I'm from this place, I'm from this socioeconomic thing, I do this and this, and then you're like, you're effectively stuck in that.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Did that make sense?
Makes
Or did I
sense.
go like too woo? Like I don't
No,
know.
it
Okay, that makes
it's
sense.
good. It's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
You gotta get a little bit of that woo for you to even like, you gotta land the plane somewhere, but first you
Right.
gotta get in the air to land the
For
plane.
sure. So yeah, like when I've observed like ego at play, it just fucking sabotages every single time.
Mhm.
And when you can kind of start peeling away the layers of the ego, because it's not just a binary thing. There's like layers to this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there are things that like trigger people, right? Like if you were, bullied, when you were young or something, and then like you come face to face with the high school bully, like, or the middle school bully, or whatever, or maybe it was like a parent that mistreated you. Your body wants to like flip into revenge, right? That's
Mhm.
kind of the paradoxical nature of life,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like if you feel unloved or mistreated, it's natural, like the human mind wants to snap into revenge to
Yeah.
get even.
It's like if somebody's mean to you, you're mean to them.
Right. But the paradox is, if you do that, you're also poisoning yourself,
Yeah.
right? If you pick the path of revenge, you're fucking poisoning yourself. That's the paradox. So it's like cutting the cord with it, letting it go, realizing that has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with them.
Mhm.
Easier said than done.
Right.
But easier said than done, right? So the more you can kind of cut the cord with that shit, those are the programs that are running around in your mind, effectively like controlling you, because then you're being led and driven by trauma,
Mhm.
right? So again, if you're so many talented people I know, like much older than me, right? Generate, because again, when I was young, I was working with much older people. Like, I'm like, dude, you're trying to prove something to someone else. You're trying to prove something to yourself. How about existing in a vibration of not having to prove? How about you do this because you love it?
Mm-hmm.
It'll spark a different thing. The art will come out a little differently. You'll enter a reality of ease.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We always talk about like when you're
Art-
filming something, if you can enjoy it, it shows on camera.
Right. Art doesn't have to be pain.
Right.
Right. There are all these like things that people latch onto sometimes. So, the more you cut the cord with ego, then the more you're just looking at things objectively. And I think for me personally, on Guardians of Justice, there was a lot of fear there,
Mhm.
because my mind works unconventionally. Right? You've told me this. You know what I mean? Like, you're like, dude, when you talk, you're not saying shit that like. I'm like, really? I spent a lot of time in isolation. I don't know. And yeah, there was like fear there. I had like legitimate like fucking fear. Like, hey, is this gonna make sense? Like, are people going to buy that I'm shifting into all these different fucking mediums like every 5 seconds?
Mhm.
But then I realized, like, look, that's just fear. This is how my mind works. This is genuinely how my mind works. Like, if I'm lost in my thoughts, it is very much like Guardians of Justice.
Mhm.
So
So you make it, and
yeah,
people either like it or they don't, and that's fine. Whatever they want.
right.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah.
Yeah, I definitely feel like that's like the highest level of martial arts, or like art, is when you're just like, it's cool. I'm just making it. Whatever. The
Yeah.
planet's gonna burn up in 5 billion years, and none of it matters. Like,
Yes.
whatever.
Yes. I try to engage with art with no attachment
Mhm.
to the outcome.
But then if you're doing that, because here's the thing, I was just like, well, whatever. But at the same time, it's like, it's not whatever, because you are passionate about it and you do make it. So somehow you need to like find this balance between like this drive and this desire and this push. Because
Okay. But here's where the balance is. I can control how I show up.
yeah,
I can control the version of Adi Shankar that shows up, right? I can control the version of Adi Shankar that is here to lead, right?
mhm,
I'm not in control of anything or anyone else.
right.
And if I'm focused on other things, other people, oh, what is this critic going to say? Oh, hey, there's this fucking troll guy and I want to stick it to him, like, or whatever it is. I'm not in control of that.
Mhm,
I'm in control of how I show up. That's it.
Yeah.
So I'm passionate. Great. I can control taking my passion and positively putting it into a piece of art.
mhm,
That's it. Everything else, and this is fucking terrifying, everything else is not under my control. Everything else is a random series of events that, or maybe not random, maybe it's an orchestration by a higher power.
Mhm.
But either way, I'm not in control of that.
Mhm. So the outcome's the same either way.
Outcome's the same either way. But if I focus on the task at hand and focus on the present, then my highest vibrational self will infuse itself into the piece of art.
I get that. It's a great spot to be. It can be really hard to get there. It can be really scary to get there. And I feel like there's a lot of working through it that you need to do first before you can even
Yes.
be there.
And then you realize that the fear comes from the expectation,
Mhm.
right? Because you get so locked on this one outcome. And then you're like, oh, I'm so attached to this outcome. What if that outcome doesn't happen?
Mhm.
Right? That's the fear. Once you cut the cord of that and you're like, what's going to happen is going to happen.
Mhm.
I'm only in control of how I show up.
And if you try your best and you're showing up as your best, it sounds like a freaking school motivational video, but you try your best and you show up doing your best, the outcome doesn't matter because you couldn't have done any better in a way.
And trust that the universe has a plan for you. And it will materialize. It will materialize.
Mhm.
You know, a closed door, a failure, a rejection, those aren't bad things. They just kind of, one door closes and you've seen this in your business. One door closes and 4 other open.
Mhm.
And then you go, okay, these 4 doors are open. Which door is in my highest excitement, and which door feels most aligned with what I want to step into?
Mhm.
And then you step into that, right?
Yeah.
Where you get trapped is if 4 doors open, 1 door closes, you're in fear. You're like, oh my God, my career's over. Everything's over. It fucking sucks. Oh my God. Oh my God. 4 doors are open. And then you pick based on fear,
Mhm.
not on alignment, not on highest excitement, not on like, what do I want to step into? You pick on fear. You're like, this one's the sure thing.
Mhm.
And the sure thing is usually not the sure thing,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah. And then you end up doing that sure thing when a little while later you're like, man, this sucks. Why am I doing this?
You're not passionate about it,
Yeah.
right? Because again, then that puts you further down the path of focusing on shit that you can't control because you're not passionate about the thing you're actually doing in the moment.
Mhm.
You can't pour your passion into something. You can't show up as the highest version of yourself because the highest version of yourself would have picked the other fucking door.
Right? Yeah. So why do you even do it in the first place? What's driving you to go out and like pursue like making projects?
Me?
Yeah.
Joy.
Just the joy of doing it?
Yes, I really enjoy doing what I do. I really deeply enjoy it.
Mhm.
I'm not trying to change the world. Like that's not, at the end of the day, if I have 15 shows on Netflix, 15 fucking shows on Netflix, right?
Mhm.
Guess what? People have a phone. They have a bunch of icons. One of them is an icon that within that icon are 15 other icons among thousands of icons, right? Not changing the world, bro. Not changing the world. You're making like little dents
Mhm.
that permeate.
Yeah.
In one shape, form, or another, right?
Mhm.
And we can also debate endlessly about the nature of creativity and the nature of ideas and where the fuck does that actually come from, right? Is that coming from a higher source? Is that coming from you? Is it some sort of like transmutation between a higher source and your trauma that's like commingling to amalgamate and then create a work of art? Like we can talk endlessly about that. But if it's not rooted in joy and it's like a painful process, what the fuck are you doing, dude? Like, what the
Mhm.
fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
Why are you doing that to yourself?
Yeah.
You know?
Especially when you're in a position where it's like so many other people want to be where you are. So if you don't like doing it, like step away and let somebody else step in.
And don't get me wrong, there are a lot of like painful moments, right? You know,
Mhm.
like learning is not easy. Amassing skills aren't easy. Like the 200, 300 failures you have to go through, which are just learning lessons in order to like get to some level of mastery where you can kind of sort of maybe do something, right?
Mhm.
It's like a painful a painful exercise, right?
Mhm.
But you have to really believe in the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And I don't mean like money. I mean just kind of like magic life gold, at the end of the rainbow. You have to really believe in that's joy,
Mhm.
and that joy comes from the process, right? Because like if you're fixated on, dude, I'm becoming a fucking preachy motherfucker. I'm sorry.
It's
I'm
a
so
podcast,
sorry.
man. That's what you're supposed
Is
to
that
do.
what you're supposed to do? Fuck. All right. Like, like, look, I don't. And I'm saying this to myself because my mind works in like a very visual. We've talked about this, like fucking very visual. Like I see snapshots and like taking a lot of information that allows me to kind of understand the macro and kind of see trends and stuff like that,
Mhm.
right? But if I let that kind of predictive thing run me, then I'm not chasing joy. I'm just chasing trends.
Yeah, just being a statistician, effectively.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, and then you also don't want to be chasing like a moment. You know, it's cool if you're like writing wrestling storylines because then it's all built about, like, oh, okay, the Undertaker's gonna hit this tombstone at WrestleMania and the crowd's gonna go nuts because or whatever. You can build wrestling around a moment, but like, yeah, if the process isn't bringing you joy and you're just doing it because you're like, oh man, I'm gonna get this one great review and then I'm gonna go to this one place and this one guy is gonna give me a high five. Like, whoa, dude, no.
Yeah, because if you just build around moments, well, let's say you get the moment, you get your perfect moment. You're like, yes. A few seconds later, the moment's done.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Like, great.
And then
What
you're
now?
and then you're depressed because you're living in the, depression's living in the past, anxiety's living in the future.
Wow.
So then you're like existing in anxiety
Mhm.
for this one hypothetical moment that might never fucking come or show up the way you want it to show up. Then the moment happens, you get a snap thing of joy or whatever, and you're
Mhm.
probably like anxious. You're like, oh my God, I can't believe it's fucking happening. Ah. And then you're depressed because you're living in the past. You're like reliving that moment. You're like, remember that when that moment happened? Everything was great. That was the great,
Yeah. One of the things we talk about a lot here is like consistency. Like
Yes.
everything comes through consistency and just doing it
Absolutely.
over and over, which is another fancy way of saying the process, right? Process and consistency are kind of the same thing.
Yes.
And, granted, you in a world of like art, you're working towards an end product, but the act of creating it should be something that you are enjoying doing, because ideally that's something that you're doing every day, as long as you're doing that as your career, if not for your entire life.
Yes.
And, it's great to like build towards your like, this is my grand epic vision. And that's cool. But now you're starting to build towards that moment where like, if that thing comes out and everybody doesn't care and like 5 people will watch it or whatever, it's like, well, now you're going to be sad. Whereas if you just enjoyed what you were doing every day, working with the people that you
Right.
work with,
Yeah.
and like it's fulfilling for you, then it comes out, it's like, great, people like it. And if it comes out and people don't like it, it's like,
Yeah.
well, that sucks. Oh,
For
well.
me, the gift was I got to make Guardians of Justice. That's it.
Mhm.
That's literally all I focus on.
Yeah.
And I retweet when people like tweet nice shit about it. And they're like, oh my God, this is so cool. I'm like, great, I retweet it. That's it.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful that someone took the time to watch it. And
Yeah.
but that's,
I think that's a lot of where my gratitude comes from too, is when somebody just takes the time to watch something that you made or to look at something you made, it's like, that's really cool. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
So I think to steer this boat away from these life lessons, there is a good time. We had a lot of great life lessons here. There's good stuff. But you talked about, how you see trends and
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. What do you see happening right now with the art that we consume, with media? It's like there's all these new streaming channels. There's Netflix, there's Apple, there's movies, maybe, question mark. Are movies still a thing? Are movies going to be a thing? Like, what do you see happening in the world around you right now?
So I don't feel like there's new streaming channels. I think these are the incumbents striking back.
Mm-hmm. So just like Hulu has obviously been around. I mean, Apple's relatively new, obviously.
Sure,
But-
but Apple has existed as an entity
Right.
for a long fucking time,
Yeah.
right? So we've got these handful of. We're effectively rebuilding the studio system of old,
Mm.
right? So there's going to be a handful of incumbent distributors, buyers, Netflix, HBO, Apple, someone else, right?
Mhm.
And that makes sense because that's kind of where that's where the ship was heading.
Yeah.
Doesn't feel too dissimilar to how it used to be.
Mhm.
And then you look at like it's all just content at the end of the day. I hate the word content, but I use it because I think it's funny. So I'm like, oh, I'm this artist, then I use the word content. But yeah, it's all just content. Now, whether your content is like 30 minutes, 90 minutes, fucking 1,000 minutes, it's content.
Yeah.
And it's going to live on one of these platforms, right? And I think the delineation between TV and movies, it's kind of an archaic thing because that was built around the two distribution platforms that existed
Right.
in the 20th century, one being the movie theater, the other one being the television that then got invented decades after the movie theater,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And so then they were programming first for the movie theater, which, in the beginning even had like live orchestras there.
Mhm.
They were figuring that model out. It didn't get crystallized into like, okay, we're going to have 90-minute movies and then we're going to churn them out and we're going to have another 90-minute movie. And then we're going to have like, that didn't like happen until pretty recently. Like they were
Yeah.
still figuring out the movie thing, for decades. So, and then TV was built around, okay, this is free. It's at home. It's built around commercial breaks. It's free because it's built around commercial breaks. And we only have like 3 networks, NBC, ABC, and CBS.
Mhm.
And this is, so there's like the movie and then there's the TV thing. And then when you cut to like the 70s, sort of like in the 60s, Hollywood was making like the studio system of Hollywood was making these like musicals,
Mhm.
like Robin Hood musicals, these very like kind of sanitary, basic things. And that gave rise to the independents who started making movies like Easy Rider. And that led to this entire creative revolution of movies like The Godfather and Rosemary's Baby and just everything that fucking came after it, right? Like Star Wars and Jaws and like everything that we look today as like iconic things of the past. And it made sense to me then why the movie theater was the movie theater and the TV channel was the TV channel. The TV channel was safe, right? There was like an FCC that monitored what could and could not fucking go on that thing.
Mhm.
And the theater wasn't really a safe place. It was like kind of a marketplace of ideas. It was almost like the like Voltaire and those guys in the during the Enlightenment, which I think Enlightenment was like 1700s.
Mhm.
Kind of, it's a marketplace of ideas. You go in, and you're transported to another world of like either like in space, criminals, like the past, the future, like the Wild West, and there were these auteurs who started like telling you these very specific stories,
Mhm.
and that's why the delineation was what it was. And then corporate America comes in the 80s, corporatizes the shit out of the movie thing, and then starts sowing the seeds of like the sequels and the franchises.
Mhm.
Meanwhile, TV got more complicated because you go from 3 channels to 5 to 10 to 15 to like almost an infinite number of channels.
Mhm.
And now we're at a weird spot because streaming isn't TV.
Right.
It's its own thing. It's its own medium.
Yeah, there's no commercials that they're trying to
Right.
keep you hooked for.
Right.
There's
Like
no longer like every 10 minutes a cliffhanger happens.
right. Or it doesn't have to be 22 minutes.
Right.
It doesn't have to be anything. Do I think that there's value in the distribution apparatus that necessitates people showing up at a location at a specific time to watch something in unison together, aka the movie theater?
Mhm.
for sure, right? But there was a law passed, I believe, in the 50s. I think it was the Glass-Steagall Act, which mandated that movie theaters could not be owned by movie studios.
Right.
So they had to be separated,
It's a
right?
monopolization thing. Yeah.
Right. And then also like agencies, talent agents couldn't also own the movie studio. So
Right.
you can't. So the law was you can't represent the talent, make the content, and distribute the content and own the means of distribution. Right.
Mhm.
Now, interestingly enough, Korea doesn't have those laws. So Korea is completely vertically integrated. And it worked out just fine for them.
Yeah.
Like their film industry is fucking robust. It moves really fast. It's cutting edge.
Yeah.
Right.
Makes some great stuff.
Yeah. In a lot of ways, what these antitrust laws did, and again, good intentions, but they ended up creating jobs for a litany of middle people
Mhm.
that make the cost of everything go way the fuck up. So I think last time we were here, we talked about how if you're Warner Brothers and you release a movie in theaters, the theater takes 50%.
Yeah.
Right off
Boom.
the bat, which is fucking insane. But now that law has been repealed, right? So Netflix, Amazon, Apple, Disney could theoretically buy theater chains or just open their own theater, right? And program however you want. And then you're no longer kind of locked in to a format,
Right.
right? Like a Game of Thrones type deal. Well, shit, a new episode comes out every week. You could buy a season pass where people are coming in every week. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
there's different models to it. And I think then the question was, so in the past, like you talk like 10 years and before, the movie thing, the theatrical experience used to drive the value of the downstream value of the content.
Mhm.
And by downstream value, I mean like, okay, it got a wide theatrical release from Warner Brothers. That meant that it was worth more on premium TV. That meant it was worth more on free TV. That meant that it would theoretically sell more DVDs. That meant that the international distribution deals were much higher, right?
Mhm.
So the theatrical release was this big driver of downstream value. I don't know if that's going to be the case going forward because we already saw the shift for independent movies, like non-blockbuster movies, where the theatrical release was more of like marketing
Yeah.
for the things, right? Because it was more like, hey, this thing's here. We're going to have some TV spots. You're probably not going to watch it in theaters, but when it shows up on DVD, you're going to buy it, you know?
Yep. I mean, that for
Or-
me, that's everything everywhere all at once, right?
Yeah.
I have kids. I can't go see it at the theater right now all the time. But the moment it's out on streaming, I'm watching it, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think any of this goes away. I think it just kind of realigns the jigsaw puzzle and makes it more specific. And I
Mhm.
think this is where the antitrust laws of the past kind of stifled innovation within Hollywood,
Mhm.
right? But then you look at the game sector, they don't really have antitrust laws.
Mhm.
So they can just fucking innovate, right?
Yeah.
Like Krafton can just go make PUBG and completely disrupt the entire game. You know what I mean? It's like PUBG was like an independent game that just blew the fuck up. And they're like valued now at, they like IPO'd and they're valued at like $28 billion. That's more than all of Viacom combined. That's more than CBS, Paramount, MTV, VH1. You combine that, that's worth less than one game, PUBG,
It's crazy.
right?
Yeah.
So yeah, like the antitrust laws and a whole other bunch of factors that we got through, like stifled innovation. But what I think is also interesting is here is that Hollywood or the movie business is or Hollywood specifically, because the movie business everywhere else in the world was like treated like these mom and pop shops, and it's like you hadn't really made it until you moved to Hollywood, right?
Right.
Guillermo del Toro became Guillermo del Toro because he left Mexico and went to Hollywood, right? I don't think Guillermo del Toro today needs to leave.
Right.
Netflix goes to Guillermo del Toro and gives him a 3-picture deal in Mexico,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
Because foreign language productions are, well, one, blowing up and they're getting global distribution, and then one of them might become Squid Game. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's also recalibrated everything. But in the past, Hollywood was operating from this culture of excess. This, we are the gatekeepers of culture. We are the manufacturers of culture. Fuck you guys. You know what I mean? It was
Mm-hmm.
like that kind of attitude, that mentality. That's now shifted. Everyone knows it,
Yeah.
right? Hollywood is not, well, Hollywood doesn't even exist anymore because, like I said, it's a handful of tech companies that are dictating what gets made, and not everyone's congregating in the city of Los Angeles hoping that, that they get signed to the right agent. That's just not the paradigm we live in anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're talking about a decentralized media landscape that's operating kind of on its back foot, where it's no longer the cool thing. It's no longer like the de facto cultural leader, which is kind of a dope spot, because when you're in that spot, you have to innovate.
Mm-hmm.
You can't rest on the laurels of the 100+ year history that came before it. You
Mm-hmm.
have to innovate, otherwise it just disappears. It
Mm-hmm.
just goes away.
What kind of innovations do you think are needed right now? Like, is it a storytelling kind of innovation, like a new way to tell stories? Is it a distribution thing? Is it just everything is now really cheap and made for a couple thousand people at a time? Like, where do you see that innovation happening?
Everything everywhere all at once. Not the movie. I think the innovation's happening everything everywhere all at once, right?
Mhm.
Like, you are part of this innovation, my friend.
As are you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Like, literally what you're doing today, right, is
Mhm.
not possible, would not have been possible at any point in time before today.
Right.
Right?
100%.
Right.
Yeah.
What I'm doing, people did this before.
Mhm.
It may not have been as good at it as I am, but was joking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, it's a little scary to think about. Like, if we tried doing what we were doing, like we started 5 or 10 years earlier, like there would have been no way for us to get our content out without somehow convincing some executive. Like, we wouldn't be making viral videos to like convince people online that we're worth watching. We'd
No.
be making videos to convince an executive that we're worth
no,
hiring.
yeah. What you would have done is, because back in the day, agencies had, like like a whole roster of people who would watch short films from students, and uh you and Sam would have made a bunch of short films, and then one of them would have slipped through the cracks of the agencies, and then you would have gotten a meeting, and then someone would have signed you, and then you would have landed somewhere and you would have made a movie, right?
Mhm.
Now, I have zero doubt that you guys would have found a niche in the film industry of old,
Mhm.
right? You guys are fucking talented people,
Thanks, man.
and you're outside the box thinkers, and you guys adapt,
Mhm.
which I think is just really important to surviving in any chaotic ecosystem, the ability to adapt. But I have zero doubt that you guys would have found your way, right? I think the other way of looking at it is, because what you're doing existed, it kept you from that,
Mhm.
right? Because you're like, look, I like the path I'm on. Why am I giving this up to go make your $500,000 ghost movie that has to be a home invasion movie because the Italian market wants home invasion movies? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're not gonna do that. Maybe if we were having this conversation in 1996, you would have. Maybe.
Mhm. Yeah, probably,
Right?
honestly.
Yeah. You guys would have been like, and probably just kind of knowing you guys and knowing your skill sets and knowing your interest, you would have probably worked your way up through the second unit path,
Mhm.
through the stunt. It'd been like a stunt coordinator,
Yep.
right? VFX, again, it's kind of a newer industry, all things considered,
Mhm.
right? So you'd have probably done the stunt things, but done practical effects, used real squibs, exploding squibs, and done that whole thing, and been second unit director on a big movie, and leverage that to make your own movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I can definitely see that. It's crazy. Definitely, like, being young and looking at all that and being like, "I wanna make movies," and then, like, imagining what it's like and then eventually kind of figuring out what it's like is definitely like a big, like a wake up call, but it's definitely a shift in realizing that how you imagine these projects getting made just doesn't necessarily align with
Oh,
like that
dude,
romantic.
I had no fucking idea about anything. Like so I question like all of reality, right? Like
Mhm.
I had no idea that there was even a camera. Like I was just like, I thought like a computer generated everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I had no idea. I'm like, yeah, like, you know, like if a stunt happened, I wasn't like, oh wow, how did they pull that off? I'm like, oh yeah, they just plugged it into a computer and it created it all.
Yeah, man. I can't help but feel like in 20 or 30 years, it's just gonna be AI content. You know? Where it's just
I don't think so.
like I want to watch my ghost movie, which is a home invasion movie, and AI is like, I have so many tropes and archetypes that I can just flesh out for you right here. Boom. Here you go.
I think there's a vertical of AI content
Mhm.
for sure. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, we'll see.
For
You're
sure.
probably
There's a
right.
vertical of it, right? But like, look, uh, furniture is mass produced by machines today. It's like
Mhm.
look at where automation has already over the last few decades impacted the world, right?
Mhm.
Like, again, it's just like AI. It's just another evolution of the industrial revolution,
Mhm.
and we've been in the industrial revolution for a long fucking time. So we have the raw data of like what happened,
Yeah.
right, with other industries.
Mhm.
And yeah, so like, you know, furniture became mass produced, but there are still craftsmen who make like highly specific shit that like people love, you know?
Mhm. Yeah. That makes sense. I suppose when it comes to art, like no one's going to want to give up. Well, people will want their content, right? And
Yeah,
it's like the content, I can see that's like
for
that's
sure.
the AI.
Yeah.
But when you want your artwork, that's where you want the human soul involved in it, you know?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
You know, and look, I think there's a version where the AI becomes sentient
Mhm. I think it's
as
real fun.
well. And then that gets into the whole thing of, well, this thing has a soul as well. And that's also trying to express something. And then you argue, okay, we've got sentient AI out there. We've got augmented humans out there who are also making art.
Mhm.
And then we have like old school, like Neanderthal humans like you and me out there who are also making art, right?
Yeah.
And again, like where does the big fucking cultural exchange happen? It happens through art.
Mhm.
And that's the next version of cultural exchange, right? It's like the augmented, genetically modified, brain augmented humans and the AI, sentient AI, and the Neanderthals like us all making art and being like, oh shit, the AI did a pretty good. Wow, I didn't understand. That's your experience. Wow, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, man. I can't wait.
are you gonna augment yourself?
Already am. My skull's wrapped in metal. No, I probably would.
Yeah,
Yeah, why not? You know? You get to live you read all the comic books, you watch the movies when you're 10 years old, and you're like, "That's cool." And then, like, I don't know, I'll be, like, 70, and I'll be old, my body will barely work, and I'll be like, "Oh, I can get, like, new legs? Hell yeah, let's go."
yeah.
How about you?
So you know, I see like kind of privacy issues around some of this stuff
Mhm.
because you know, like in the not too distant future, we're likely all going to have access to an AI companion,
Yep.
right? So it's like an AI bot that's either in your head or floating around, kind of tracking all your movements, all your behaviors, and being like, listen, dude, you don't need another cup of coffee today. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, your goal is to you should hit the gym, you know, whatever it is, like
Yeah.
kind of guiding you guiding you through life. And I do think that would be valuable in some ways. It just kind of comes down to like who's building this stuff and what's the intentionality behind it?
Wait, what was that
What's
question?
the intentionality behind
Intention?
it?
I mean, I would probably make money, you know?
Which is, I think, an issue.
Yeah.
If you're designing,
Like, why would you invite a salesman to be your best friend if they're constantly trying to sell you
why would
something?
you invite a salesman to like program your mind,
Right.
like, and follow you around and track all of your data and everything and know exactly how to manipulate you.
I started writing, I guess it's a movie. I started writing a movie with this idea. There's a tech company like Google. They make the first like AI friend. It basically takes over. They become like the de facto, effectively government slash, kind of leader for everybody. And the CEO of this company one night drunkenly hits a guy with his car. I guess they have AI cars by then, but whatever. This is a flaw in my story. But he hits a guy with his car and kills him. He's like, oh, fuck. But no one saw it happen, right? And he basically goes to the system and deletes all record of this guy on their servers. And
Okay.
since the world kind of looks to, it's like Google. Like if Google wiped you from all the results outside of the people that personally know you, you wouldn't exist, right?
Yeah.
And you take that even a little bit step further. So this guy basically erases this dude from life, except for this young reporter girl who like still works for like a newsprint magazine. It's like a hipster thing. And it was like her boss that got killed, right? So like she's trying to do some old-fashioned journalism and figure out what happened in this mystery, like in a world that's all super high tech now.
For
and
sure.
doesn't rely on it
It can get
anymore.
fucking crazy because we're gonna have like ocular upgrades and hearing upgrades, right?
Yeah.
And if it's like if one tech company were to presumably like run everything, it can isolate you and say, okay, every ocular upgrade no longer sees Niko, and if Niko talks, no longer hears Niko.
Mm-hmm.
You're fucking gone in like 2 seconds.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Can't Google his
That's
name.
like a crazy, but real, because that like kind of happens already.
It happens all the time
It happens
already.
now, like all the time, just not in like a loony sci-fi way. It happens more of in a like a kind of creepy backroom espionage kind of way, And on some level, I prefer the creepy like tech way.
Yeah. At least the creepy tech way, you can just be like, whatever, I'll go fishing.
Yeah,
or whatever other hobby you're into.
Right. Yeah. You just leave me the fuck alone, you assholes. Yeah, dude. I think the future is fucking, it's gonna be just miraculous to watch, because we are on some level. I don't think on some level. I think on every level we've reached the zenith, the pinnacle,
Mhm.
the maximum capacity of what materialism and focusing on the material world can provide us.
Yeah.
As a species.
That's
right?
true. I mean, like right now, sitting in this room, what material item could make you more comfortable?
I mean, nothing.
Yeah.
Maybe a blanket. Maybe a blanket, as long as it wasn't kind of full of dust and corridor digital sweat. And
all our
like
blankets come with
some-
authentic corridor
some-
digital sweat.
Some COVID designed to like spread it to my team to like take them all out so that you guys can acquire us. Like,
oh man, you're onto us.
No, like, yeah. So I feel like this material world thing would ideally get sorted out on some level before we start pivoting into like reality pivoting software
Mhm.
and hardware.
Yeah.
Like the metaverse and brain augmentation and ocular augmentation and artificial intelligence that will at some point become sentient.
Mm-hmm. What's your measurement for sentience, by the way? We're gonna take a little sci-fi turn
Like,
here.
what's my measurement for
Yeah.
sentience?
Your measurement for like what would make you call an AI sentient?
If they can recite rap lyrics.
So we're there.
If we can battle rap with an AI, it's sentient.
I think we're there.
All right, there's sentient AI out there.
I mean, arguably, we passed the Turing test multiple times at this
Yeah.
point.
We're there,
It's weird.
man. And look, a lot of people thought we were there before we were there, because you made like these like videos that
Mhm.
tricked people into thinking we were there, and they didn't. They just shared the video and they're like, "This is cool."
Yep.
You mean the video of the dog fucking killing the dude that Miko made that was fake? You think that's cool?
The
Okay.
robot one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fake robot videos. Yeah. No, I think we're there, dude. We're there.
Yeah.
We're there.
It's just real subtle and like not quite as like movie-esque, so people haven't quite recognized it yet.
I mean, on some level, how do we know that we're sentient?
I mean, we're just a fancy neural network.
Yeah. Well, I also feel like we're also like, I do believe that there's a soul as well. Right? There's a soul, there's a spirit. There are there's more to your energy field than just your physical body, right?
Mhm.
Like if you walk into a room where two people have just had like an argument, you can fucking feel the energy
Mhm.
in the room, right? Even if you're like, what just happened?
Yeah.
So I do think there's more. I do believe that there's more to this than just we're a bunch of ones and zeros in a biological code.
Mhm.
I do think that there's also that aspect. I do wonder about what is this reality, and I believe that we're in some sort of some sort of virtual reality system simulation.
I mean, almost by definition.
Yeah.
Not that really. Once again, like, not that really matters because all
Yeah.
the every day is gonna be the same day. It's gonna be
Sure,
regardless.
it literally has zero impact on anything, and it doesn't mean you can dodge bullets. So don't fucking do that. But there are other dimensions out there. There are people that can communicate with other dimensions out there.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah,
It's nice. There's still a little bit of mystery. You know, I feel like the one thing that we saw go away in our very very early parts of our lifetime, like we got to see the internet get invented, right? Crazy, right? But before that, the one thing that we saw was the world got defogged 100%. When I say defogged, like, a video game, you're playing a video game, you're on the map, and the map's foggy, and as you move, the fog clears.
yeah.
And like when you and I were like 1 years old, it's
Oh
like
fuck,
the world was
oh my
still
God.
a little foggy.
Totally.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's such an amazing way to articulate that. Yes. Yeah. And like we would just spread rumors all the time. It's like, oh, I heard in this place they have
Yeah.
like
There's dinosaurs potentially
Yeah.
still somewhere in the deep central part of Africa.
yeah. Yeah. Like you had no fucking idea.
hmm
You had no way of knowing, right? If someone said they like, oh, there's some tribe in Australia where people can teleport, like you don't fucking know,
hmm
right?
Yep.
You don't know if the government actually has Terminators. They might. I don't know. They weren't
Yeah.
going to tell me.
Now it's all defogged.
Right now, it's all defogged.
Yeah.
All defogged. That's brilliant. All defogged.
Just think about like humankind for years, for centuries, for millennia, constantly trying to defog, and it happened.
Well, I would say the material world has been defogged.
Right. Yeah.
Right. There is this unknown. There is something that exists, depending on how woo-woo you want to go with it.
Mm-hmm.
But
Or at
there's
least geographically speaking.
geographically, yeah.
Yeah.
But there is something else.
Yeah.
Like do you know that experiment where you like kind of hold the water in the glass and you say I love you, and it changes the crystallization of the water?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, like I'm gonna sound like I'm completely making this shit up. So I would encourage you to like go look this up, or anyone to look this up. But this is the thing, like the molecular structures of water changes depending on what intention you put into it.
Interesting.
Um,
I'll have to Google that. Look it up.
so there is kind of more to even the material world than the material world would have you believe.
I think taking a little bit of mystery into the end of this podcast is probably the best way to
Yeah,
wrap it up. So let's roll with that.
love that.
All right.
Cool.
Well, everybody, Adi, that was a great conversation,
I
man.
fucking love talking to you. Bro.
I like talking to you too. And I like that
Fucking
we have the
love you.
excuse of I love you too, dude. And I'm glad we have the excuse of like, microphones and cameras to like just let us sit down and chat.
Yeah,
for
just
like
feed
3
the
hours.
ego. You know what I mean? I was like, yeah, it got documented. I said some dope shit and it got documented.
But in all honesty, for everybody that's listening and watching this podcast, really appreciate it. Thank you for tuning in. Hope you guys enjoy it. Love to hear people's thoughts down below, in the comments. That's like my favorite thing is to read comments and see the discussions going on.
I also brought 3 outfits today, and Niko picked this one.
Yeah, it was the coolest looking one. Like you said, leisure athletics.
Totally.
Like I'm athletic, but not right now.
What would Tony Stark wear? This.
I'm in between workouts.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
My first workout was 2 months ago. My next workout's in about 2 months. So I'm in between workouts right now.
It's amazing. I had a lumberjack outfit, a Ryan Gosling in Drive outfit, and a this. Wow.
Yeah. Would that be like Italian
Mobster,
leisure?
like the tracksuit mafia.
Yeah.
From Hawkeye.
There you go. European
you,
F1
man.
fan.
Love you.
Love you too, dude. Thanks for coming out. Yeah. Thanks for listening, everybody. See you
Thank
guys in
you.
the next one.
Thank you. Bye.